Hello, my name is Candace Stone, and today I'm going to be presenting on equal pay for equal work and does a gap exist? Equal pay for equal work, what is it exactly? Well, it's where employees who perform the same tasks or duties get paid the same wage, regardless of sex, age, national origin, or race. Although issues regarding age, national origin, and race are concerns of equal pay, the concern of the wage gap between men and women is the main focus of my presentation today. To go over some history of men and women being paid and working, and during World War II, it would permanently change the role of women in the workforce as men went off to war. About 6 million new women workers entered the labor force, taking jobs in heavy industry and other previously male-dominated industries. Some most popular occupations for women post-World War II were office work, retail sales, nursing, and teaching. In the 1960s, women were earning about 60% of what men were earning. Or to put it in other terms, for every dollar a man made, women would only make 60 cents. In 1973, we saw the largest recorded wage gap, where women were earning less than 60% of what men were earning. Currently, women are earning about 80% of what men earn. There are several laws concerning equal pay for equal work that I'll be going over, and they are the Equal Pay Act of 1963, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Civil Rights Act of 1991, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, the Paycheck Fairness Act, and also state comparable work legislation. The Equal Pay Act of 1963 was the prohibition of sex discrimination, and it made it illegal for employers to discriminate on the basis of sex by paying wages to employees at a rate less than what they were paying to the opposite sex. Under that law, pay includes wages, salaries, commissions, and any other forms of cash compensation. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 made it unlawful for employers to discriminate based off of sex, religion, color, race, or national origin. And it also made it so they would have to outlaw the limit or segregation based off of those items of sex, individual race, color, religion, and national origin. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 had a huge impact. It outlawed discrimination based off of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, as well as it officially ended racial segregation in schools and public facilities. It also led to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where their purpose was to increase job opportunities for women and minorities. Also, by 1978, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act came about, and that act banned discrimination from employers against pregnant women in the workplace. The Civil Rights Act of 1991 provided monetary damages in cases of intentional employment discrimination, and it provided the right to trial by jury on discrimination claims, and it also introduced the possibility of emotional distress damages and limited the amount that a jury could award. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was a court access case, and it restored the law to ensure that the time limit for bringing a Title VII and other pay discrimination cases would renew with each discriminatory paycheck. It also gave employees their day in court to challenge a wage gap and ensured that a woman has a proper window of time to sue for pay discrimination. The Paycheck Fairness Act amends the portion of the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 known as the Equal Pay Act, to revise remedies for enforcement of and exceptions to prohibitions against sex discrimination in the payment of wages. It limits such factors to bona fide factors such as education, training, or experience. And it also makes employers who violate sex discrimination prohibitions liable in a civil action for either compensatory or punitive damages. State comparable work legislation has to do with specific state laws that have also been created on top of the Equal Pay Act. And there's 14 states that have taken these laws. The statutes generally forbid employers from paying employees of one sex less than they pay employees of the opposite sex for comparable work or work of comparable character. In some states, employees may collect substantial payback and liquidated damages by showing a wage disparity, even when the jobs being compared seem substantially different on the surface. I'm going to go over some statistics now regarding this matter. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, in 2003, women who worked full-time earned on average only 78 cents for every dollar that a man earned. And the figures actually get worse for women of color or anyone other than a Caucasian woman. African American women earned approximately 64 cents per dollar that a man earned, and Latinas earned only 56 cents for each dollar earned by a white male. This graphic here helps illustrate women's share of employment and their earnings based off the industry. If you see, the highest share for women is in the sales and office related industry with 62%. But when we look at the median weekly earnings with men and women combined, women are making 81 cents per dollar. And that's actually the highest of these different industries. The lowest one is also where women have the lowest share of employment, and that's in natural resources, construction, and maintenance. They only make up about 4% there, but they're only making 67 cents on the dollar for every dollar a man earns. The other highly noted one is the service industry and the professional industry. Women make up more than half, 57% of employees, yet they're making only 74 to 79 cents per dollar that a man makes, even though there's more women working than men in those industries. The wage gap is absolutely a current issue. Despite the passage of the Equal Pay Act of 1963, the gender gap still exists. In 2014, again, we'll note that the women are only making 79% of what the typical man earns working full-time all year. And that is even worse when we look at if it's a woman other than a Caucasian woman. In regards to the wage gap, women are earning less than men in all different sectors, and the percentage varies based off your source. However, it is noted to say that it doesn't necessarily mean that women are being paid less for the same position as men. It also means that for every dollar earned by the average man in the workforce in the United States, that the average woman earns 81 cents. In addition, there's 30 million women in the workforce in 1970, and they made up less than 40% of the workforce. But in 2010, that number rose to 72 million women in the workforce, almost 50%. Some people argue that the reason for the wage gap is not due to women being undervalued, but to the fact that women tend to choose careers that pay less compared to the careers that men choose. Men tend to choose careers geared more towards control, like management and finance, whereas women tend to choose careers geared more towards nurturing, like childcare, teaching, and nursing. Another argument for why women are paid less on average compared to men is because women traditionally fulfill the role as a primary parent, and that women remove themselves from the workforce or take reduced hours to take care of their children, and that male employees are often quicker to relocate for better salaries than many female employees, as often the latter tied geographically due to family or their significant other's employment. Some questions that I want you to consider are, does a wage gap exist? And why are management and finance jobs valued at a higher pay? Teachers and nurses are considered to be some of the most impactful jobs for our nation, for our children, to take care of the elderly, the sick, but they're valued in monetary terms at much less than managerial jobs or finance jobs. And why is that? There, of course, are many ethical issues and concerns in regard to equal pay for equal work. Not only is it an ethical issue, it's also a legal issue, an employment issue, and a human rights issue. I decided to break down the ethical and human rights issues by principles and values. And principles are specific and pervasive boundaries for human behavior and behavior that should not be violated. And values are enduring beliefs and ideals that are socially enforced. The wage gap that exists today, just as it did 50 years ago, is absolutely discrimination against women. When a woman earns less than a man, it affects not only the wage-earning woman herself, but it also affects her family, community, and the economy. It affects her family because she's bringing in less income home to support the family, or perhaps having to work more hours to make up the difference in being away from home and away from her family. It also affects the community because it makes it a less cohesive society, because society accepts that men and women are not equal and that it's okay for a man to make more than a woman to make just because he's a man. It also affects our economy because that means that less disposable income is coming into that woman's home. And if she was getting paid the same as what a man was getting paid, she would have more disposable income that could be, put back into the economy and through spending. In conclusion, women have made vast strides in concern to equal pay for equal work, but there is still further to go. Whether people look at the raw statistics and see that women are making less than men still, or people try to justify the difference to the choices in employment and industry that men and women work in, a wage gap still exists today. Thank you for viewing this presentation on equal pay for equal work, and if you have any questions, just let me know.